World War I was a conflict that reshaped the world, altering political landscapes and setting the stage for the modern era. Initially, the United States remained neutral, avoiding direct involvement in the brutal war tearing Europe apart. However, a single diplomatic blunder changed everything: the infamous Zimmermann telegram. This secret communication, intercepted and decrypted by British intelligence, pushed the US into the conflict, forever altering the course of history. Stay with us as we unravel the story behind this telegram, its far-reaching consequences, and the espionage that exposed one of the greatest diplomatic mistakes in modern history. If you love deep dives into history's most intriguing moments, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to never miss a new episode. The global stage. A war that engulfed nations. By 1917, World War I had already raged for 3 years, leaving devastation across Europe and beyond. What had initially been expected to be a short, decisive conflict had instead turned into a prolonged and brutal war of attrition. The Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire, were locked in a deadly struggle against the Allied powers, including Britain, France, and Russia. The war had devolved into a nightmarish stalemate, with both sides dug into vast networks of trenches that stretched across the Western Front. Soldiers faced relentless artillery bombardments, machine gun fire, and the horrors of gas warfare, all for the sake of gaining mere yards of territory. The war's effects were not limited to the trenches of Europe. It had become a truly global conflict, with battles raging in Africa, the Middle East, and the Pacific. The Ottoman Empire fought fiercely against British-led forces in the deserts of the Middle East, while Japan, aligned with the Allies, seized German-held territories in China and the Pacific. At sea, naval warfare intensified as Germany attempted to strangle Britain with its U-boat campaign, while the British Royal Navy enforced a crippling blockade against the Central Powers. The United States, a reluctant spectator. Despite the widespread devastation, the United States, under President Woodrow Wilson, had managed to remain officially neutral. Wilson, a staunch advocate for diplomacy, believed that America should not entangle itself in European affairs. He saw the war as a distant conflict, one that did not directly threaten the US or its people. American industry, however, benefited greatly from supplying weapons, food, and supplies to the Allies. This economic relationship made the US far from an impartial observer, even as Wilson continued to push for peace. Yet, as the war dragged on, the idea of remaining neutral became increasingly difficult. Germany's policy of unrestricted submarine warfare had already put American lives at risk. The most infamous example was the sinking of the Lusitania in 1915, when a German U-boat torpedoed the British passenger liner, killing nearly 1,200 people, including 128 Americans. The attack caused outrage in the US, but Germany temporarily backed down, fearing that direct American involvement could tip the balance of the war. However, by 1917, Germany was growing desperate. The war on the Western Front was at a standstill, Russia was teetering on the brink of revolution, and Britain's naval blockade was choking Germany's access to food and supplies. In an effort to break the deadlock, Germany made a fateful decision: to resume unrestricted submarine warfare, knowing it might provoke the United States. They calculated that even if America entered the war, their U-boats could cripple Britain before American forces could fully mobilize. At the same time, German officials sought ways to keep the US distracted. This led to a bold but reckless diplomatic gamble: the Zimmermann telegram. When the message was intercepted and made public, it shattered any remaining hope for American neutrality. What had once seemed like a distant European conflict suddenly became an immediate national threat. With the combination of unrestricted submarine warfare and the shocking revelation of Germany's secret plans, Wilson's hand was forced. The US could no longer stand by as a passive observer. The Zimmermann telegram was the final push that convinced Americans that their nation's security and honor were at stake. A war that had once been seen as Europe's problem had now engulfed the world, drawing the United States into the fight. The Zimmermann telegram, a dangerous gamble. Arthur Zimmermann, Germany's State Secretary for Foreign Affairs, devised a bold plan to keep the United States distracted and potentially prevent it from joining the war against Germany. The idea was simple yet incredibly risky. Germany would propose a military alliance with Mexico, promising the country financial aid and the return of lost territories, Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, if it joined the war against the United States. On January 16, 1917, Zimmermann sent the telegram through diplomatic channels to the German ambassador in Mexico, Heinrich von Eckert. The message, encoded to ensure secrecy, outlined Germany's intentions in case the U.S. declared war on Germany. It instructed von Eckert to approach the Mexican government with the proposal, enticing them with promises of regaining lands lost during the Mexican-American War of 1846-1848. British espionage. Cracking the code. The Zimmermann telegram might have remained a secret if not for the vigilance of British intelligence. The British had long been intercepting German communications, thanks to their access to transatlantic cables. Unknown to Germany, British codebreakers at Room 40, an intelligence unit specializing in decryption, had already cracked many of Germany's diplomatic codes. When the telegram was intercepted, the British recognized its immense value. However, they faced a dilemma: how to reveal the telegram's contents without exposing their ability to read German communications. The British needed to be careful in how they presented their findings, ensuring that Germany did not realize its encryption methods were compromised. To solve this problem, the British devised a clever strategy. They arranged for the telegram to be rediscovered by obtaining a copy in Mexico. By doing so, they could present the message as if it had been leaked rather than intercepted through espionage. Once they had a version of the message that appeared to be sourced independently, they shared it with the United States. The telegram's revelation and American reaction. On February 24, 1917, the British presented the decoded telegram to the U.S. government. President Woodrow Wilson was initially skeptical, but once cryptographic experts confirmed its authenticity, the implications became clear. This was undeniable proof that Germany was actively conspiring against the United States. On March 1, 1917, the U.S. government released the telegram to the public. Newspapers across the country printed the shocking revelation, and the American people reacted with outrage. Many who had supported neutrality now demanded action. The idea that Germany had attempted to form an alliance with Mexico, encouraging war on American soil, was seen as an unforgivable betrayal. The Mexican government, led by President Venustiano Carranza, analyzed the proposal but dismissed it. Carranza and his advisors knew that Mexico lacked the military capability to engage the United States in a full-scale war. Moreover, even if Germany provided financial aid, the logistical challenges of fighting a war against the U.S. were insurmountable. Mexico, already struggling with internal conflicts from its own revolution, had no desire to antagonize its powerful northern neighbor. Despite Mexico's rejection, the damage was done. The American public, previously divided on entering the war, now largely supported intervention. The Zimmermann telegram was the final straw. The United States declares war. On April 2, 1917, President Woodrow Wilson stood before a joint session of Congress and delivered one of the most significant speeches in American history. With the weight of the moment heavy upon him, he called for a declaration of war against Germany. Wilson, who had won re-election just months earlier under the slogan, "He kept us out of war," now made the case that neutrality was no longer an option. The world, he argued, must be made safe for democracy. In his speech, Wilson laid out the reasons why the United States could no longer stand aside. Germany's resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare had led to the sinking of American merchant ships, endangering lives and economic interests. The Zimmermann telegram had revealed a direct threat to U.S. sovereignty, exposing Germany's willingness to conspire against America on its own soil. Wilson framed the war not as a conflict of conquest but as a moral crusade against aggression and tyranny. The choice, he said, was between defending the principles of freedom or allowing militarism to dominate the world. 4 days later, on April 6, 1917, Congress voted overwhelmingly in favor of war. The Senate approved the declaration 82-6, and the House of Representatives followed with a vote of 373-50. The United States was officially at war. Across the nation, reactions were mixed. In major cities, patriotic rallies erupted as young men volunteered for military service, eager to fight for their country. America's impact. A turning point in the war. The entry of the United States into World War I marked a decisive turning point. At the time of its declaration, the American military was small and underprepared for a global conflict. The U.S. Army had fewer than 200,000 troops, far below the millions mobilized by European powers. But what the United States lacked in immediate military strength, it made up for with industrial and financial power. American factories, which had already been supplying weapons and supplies to the Allies, ramped up production to an unprecedented level. The U.S. also provided crucial financial aid, extending loans that allowed Britain and France to sustain their war efforts. By the summer of 1917, the American Expeditionary Forces, AEF, led by General John J. Pershing, began arriving in Europe. At first, their numbers were small, but by mid-1918, over 1 million American troops had joined the fight. These fresh soldiers brought renewed energy to the exhausted Allied forces. While Britain and France had suffered years of brutal trench warfare, American troops entered the battlefield with high morale, ready to break the deadlock. The turning point came in the summer and fall of 1918. With U.S. forces playing a key role, the Allies launched a series of offensives that pushed the German army back. Battles such as the Second Battle of the Marne and the Meuse-Argonne offensive saw American troops in fierce combat, proving their effectiveness on the battlefield. The infusion of American manpower and resources overwhelmed Germany, which was already struggling with food shortages, internal unrest, and the collapse of its allies. On November 11, 1918, the war finally came to an end with the signing of an armistice. Germany, realizing it could no longer sustain the fight, agreed to surrender. The entry of the United States had tipped the scales, ensuring that the Allies would emerge victorious. The decision to enter World War I, driven in part by the Zimmermann telegram, changed history. It demonstrated the power of intelligence, the importance of alliances, and the unpredictable nature of war. What began as a European conflict had drawn in the United States, setting the stage for the 20th century's greatest struggles, and for America's emergence as a dominant force on the world stage. The legacy of the Zimmermann telegram. The Zimmermann telegram stands as one of history's most consequential diplomatic mistakes, one that dramatically altered the trajectory of World War I and shaped the geopolitical landscape for decades to come. Its exposure was a turning point in modern intelligence, demonstrating the power of espionage, cryptography, and diplomatic maneuvering in times of war. It also highlighted the miscalculations made by the German government, not only in their ability to maintain secrecy but in their fundamental misunderstanding of both Mexican and American priorities. Instead of keeping the United States out of the war, the telegram had the exact opposite effect, ensuring American involvement and accelerating Germany's eventual defeat. The implications of the Zimmermann telegram went far beyond its immediate wartime consequences. It reinforced the importance of intelligence gathering and code breaking, proving that intercepted communications could be just as decisive as battlefield victories. The British codebreakers at Room 40, who successfully decrypted the message, demonstrated that wars were no longer fought solely with weapons but with information. This realization would go on to influence intelligence operations in World War II and beyond, paving the way for the establishment of dedicated cryptographic agencies such as Britain's Government Code and Cipher School, GC&CS, at Bletchley Park and the United States National Security Agency, NSA, in later decades. Furthermore, the telegram exposed the vulnerabilities of diplomatic communication in an increasingly interconnected world. Prior to World War I, nations had relied heavily on diplomatic couriers and coded messages sent via undersea telegraph cables. The Zimmermann telegram proved that no communication was truly secure, especially when rival powers had the technological capability to intercept and decrypt messages. On a political level, the Zimmermann telegram deepened the divide between the United States and Germany, cementing a sense of distrust that would last long after the war ended. While some Americans had initially opposed involvement in World War I, viewing it as a distant European conflict, the intercepted telegram shattered any illusions of neutrality. The idea that Germany was actively conspiring with Mexico to wage war against the United States outraged the public and galvanized support for intervention. The ensuing declaration of war marked the United States' emergence as a major global power, setting a precedent for its role in international conflicts throughout the 20th century. The impact of the telegram was also felt in Mexico. While President Venustiano Carranza ultimately rejected the German proposal, the mere suggestion of an alliance caused tensions between Mexico and the United States. In the years that followed, Mexico remained cautious in its dealings with its northern neighbor, wary of provoking another conflict. Meanwhile, Germany's failed attempt to recruit Mexico as an ally highlighted the challenges of influencing Latin American nations, many of which sought to avoid entanglement in European affairs. As we reflect on this incredible story, we see how seemingly small decisions can lead to massive consequences. The Zimmermann telegram was a diplomatic gamble that failed spectacularly, proving that the tides of war can shift with a single intercepted message. The world of espionage, code-breaking, and political maneuvering that emerged from this event continues to shape global conflicts to this day. If you love exploring the hidden forces that have shaped history, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and join us for more in-depth investigations into the past.